any kind of harassment to other living creatures. But we are doing it on very large scale.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Please have your very short questions. I have already Lipika Kharp from JNU. So if you can just identify and come up. Yeah, please. Yeah. Can we have mic here? Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning to the dignitaries. So my question is that in global forums like BRICS and COP, India and China share convergence of interests as well as of ideas, with both being developing nations. However, at other platforms like Quad and United Nations, our interests become contradictory and to some extent conflicting. Therefore, I would like to know how will India manage to maintain the balance between this cooperation and contradiction now that India will be setting the agenda for the debate in one of the most relevant organizations, that is G20. Thank you.
Thank you. One more right here in the middle, in the front. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Karthik Garg. I'm master student at International Relations, Jawaharlal Nehru University. So India has always been supportive of multilateralism when it comes to the foreign policy. And yeah, as you also mentioned in one of the conference that India does not want to join one of the bloc, but consider itself as a bloc because we are one of the fifth largest economy and everything. But looking into the challenges from those countries who want to maintain the status quo, so how do you see G20 presidency as acting as the bridge to make the multilateral world more unified, sir?
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. The first question, I made the point to mention the fact that it's important for us today, including in the G20 context, to reassert and re-articulate our reverence for nature. And reverence for nature doesn't mean completely human-centric. I mean, it's nature in its entirety. So there are, deep traditions in our country. It's part of our culture. Uh, in many of us, I mean, it may not have been explicitly taught. It's habit. It's habit which we pick up from our families, from the environment around us, and it's just often we don't reflect on our habits. We sometimes frankly imitate the habits of other people. I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but certainly the more we delve into our own beliefs and traditions and heritage, I think there are sources of strength, including in the precise point you made, which is that we should be caring of nature in its widest possible definition, including all beings and all forms of nature. Now, if I were to move from that to something very different, which is how do you, because this is in a sense that's a lifestyle question she's asking. Yours is more a statecraft kind of question. The statecraft here is really how do you manage contradictions? How do you have different agendas, different partners, different abilities to deal with them? And that is actually the challenge for diplomacy. Now, it is also a particular challenge for bigger countries because bigger countries have more varied interests. So when you have more varied interests, you have different kinds of partners. Now, if you look today at who are our partners, our political partners, our security partners, our developmental partners, our energy partners, our digital partners would all be different combinations of people. So it's not just how do you deal with two sets of people. Depending on the issue, you will get a different combination of countries to deal with. Now, how does that play into G20? It is precisely because we have, shall I say, grown that ability to deal with on different agendas with different partners. That is the value that we bring to the G20. Today, I'll be very honest with you, the world is very polarized. Many of the issues that I put, I mean, they sound very measured when I use the words that I did. But For a lot of countries, these are very passionate issues about which they have very strong feelings. Even having everybody in the room was a real challenge in the last G20 meeting in Bali. So a country like India, which is independent minded, which, in a sense is respected to a great extent, is trusted, which has a kind of a middle ground to bring differing parties to the table. And it's not just us alone. I mean, we work with other countries. We were, for example, very supportive of the Indonesian presidency in Bali. I think the value for countries who are in the middle, who are good at forging common ground, who have multiple relationship, I think that has grown in a polarized world. And my sense is the value of the Indian presidency will be demonstrated precisely because we have that trait. The third question, which is the status quo, how do you deal with the status quo? It's an interesting question you are asking, because till 2008, G20 started in 2008. Till 2008, there was something called the G7. Briefly, it was a G8. So, they took in Russia, then they took out Russia. And the belief was that the big world issues, the global issues, would be decided by the most developed countries, who were the G7, who were primarily northern countries. This was basically Europe and North America together. And they found, when there was a crisis in 2008, that it was not possible for them anymore to produce realistic responses to that global financial crisis. So G20 itself is a statement that the status quo has to evolve, that it has to change. But because it changed from G7 to G20, it doesn't mean that is the last word. It is just one step in the change of that status quo. Now, just think to yourself, I'm now going maybe just 6, 7, 8 years by the end of the decade. By the end of the decade, for sure, we'll be the most populous country. Almost certainly will be the third largest economy in the world. Our human resources by 2030, in a knowledge economy, in a world which is dominated by artificial intelligence, our human resources will be much more critical for the global economy. Now, tell me, if that is the situation, how long will we be kept out of the crucial decisions on running of the world? So I would say, in a way, time is on my side. That with each passing day, I've been in foreign policy now for 45 years. This was not what it was 45 years ago. But with each passing day, I think the world sees the value of India. And a lot of that would depend how we do at home. The more we do at home, after all, look at the crucial issues today before the G20. Health. Okay. Why is the world respecting India today? Because we could produce vaccines, because we could have the vaccines, as shots in the arm, because we had a platform to organize that, because we had digital delivery to take care of people's financial and food needs while all of this was happening. So similarly, they look at digital. In the old days, for them, digital was the back office. Today, they know digital, India's role in digital is much more than that. We are actually, in a way, an exemplar of how we are delivering on the ground, that last mile delivery that I spoke about. Now, it could be in other areas. We are, in our entire region, we are seen as the first responder. When the tsunami happened in 2004, people turned to America and to Japan and Europe. Today, if something happens in the Indian Ocean, they look and turn to us and say, where is India? So, the status quo by definition is not tenable. There will be countries with vested interest who will seek to slow it down. We all know who they are. Our effort would be to make sure, and the G20 presidency will give us an opportunity to demonstrate to the world that, this is India. After 75 years, we have arrived at this situation. The next 25 years, these are the possibilities we can do. So that is why I said, we have to make the
Now I would go to web, and we already have a lot of requests from various partner institutions here. Let me first go to Nalanda University. I would also come to NIAS Bangalore, and then Central University of Gujarat. So these three I have identified based on their requests. Maybe I think we can just allow unmute them, and in that order we can have.
My question. Being at Nalanda University, I wish to ask, how can we bring the global south into powerful conversation in a polarized world in context of G20?
Question, can you please repeat that?
My question is, being at Nalanda University, I wish to ask, how can we bring the global south into powerful conversation in a polarized world in context of G20?
Thank you. Thank you. Can we go to NIAS Bangalore and Central University of Gujarat?
My name is Harini from NIAS. My question is, how can India use the G20 presidency to enhance its engagement in the global commons and among new emerging technological domains developmental goals? Indonesia had something called Space 20. Should we be looking at outer space, AI, cyberspace, and R&D in these domains for this year?
Can you please come back again? I'm sorry. Others, please mute yourselves. We are not able to hear. But would you please come back and repeat your question?
NIAS. My question is, how can India use the G20 presidency to enhance our engagement in the global commons and among new emerging technological domains for our common developmental goals? For example, Indonesia had a Space 20. Should India also be looking at outer space, AI, cyberspace, and R&D in these domains during the year?
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Now, can we have our colleagues from Central University of Gujarat?
Good afternoon. My question is, how can young scholars contribute to formulate better policies to cope up with coastal security challenges like trafficking or ecological degradation in Gujarat or other sensitive areas?
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I would now hand it over to the Honorable Minister.
Thank you. So the first question is really, in a polarized world, how do you include or get G20 into the conversations? That, in fact, is one of our biggest commitments during the presidency, because what we have seen, during the COVID and especially this year, which is much more polarized, the polarization may occur elsewhere. The people who suffer most are the global south. So if fuel prices go up, if food prices go up, it's not like the developed countries don't feel the pain, but there's a big difference, when you are at $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 per annum and when you are $1,000 per annum. So those who don't have any margins, who have no savings, who are already kind of on the edge, they don't have that ability today to take the pain which this polarization is spreading around the world. And that is why, our intention is to see how best we can get the leaders to focus on what we think and what a large part of the world thinks are the right issues. And, it's not something which is necessarily in, specifically in India's mind. Our process of consultation, I travel around, the Prime Minister meets a lot of leaders at different ways. We get a sense of what the world feeling is. we do think that there are issues out there which need to be brought to the table, and definitely, how do you keep the sustainable development agenda? How do countries deal with debt? How is it that climate change is not affected by a lack of additional resources? These are all issues today, and our intention is very much to be a champion of Global South and find ways. And that's why the majority of our guests who were brought in, please note, are actually from the Global South. So that's what we are trying to do there. On the second issue, the global commons issue, it's a very good question, because again, what we have seen maybe in the last decade is more countries are acting nationally, and the ability to work together to protect and preserve and nurture the global commons is actually decreasing. And the idea that one or two countries can bear this burden sometimes has used to happen in the past. I think that era is now behind us. Look at collaborative solutions for many challenges, including some of the issues which were highlighted. But associated with this, just look also at which we will be taking into G20. Some of you would have read recently about, there was a satellite from Bhutan, which was launched just a few days ago. Or as you saw during, COVID, our willingness to work with a lot of countries in the Global South. You're all students, you would see today the number of foreign students in Indian universities. We are seeking to expand it. We have specific programs to different regions, from PhD to bachelor's degree. How do we actually get more students in? We are looking at distance health and distance education as ways of connecting more with the people. So I think an India today which is willing to, which has more capabilities, which has stronger technologies, which has, as the Prime Minister keeps reminding us, a heritage, a tradition of humanistic thinking. I think we can actually, demonstrate a difference. Now, whether other countries share it or not share it, that is up to them. But at least from our point of view, we can show, okay, I had this opportunity, I used this opportunity to the best, to the world's good. And I think that's a very, very powerful message that will and should come out. The third issue, what can young scholars do? I mean, first of all, young scholars can do a lot, partly because they're scholars, but even more because they're young. And I'm not saying this to flatter you, because your ways of communicating are very, very different. Your ways of spreading message is, far more effective. I would sit and read a newspaper. You're done with the equivalent of a newspaper in the first 30 seconds after you get up. So if you look at these big challenges that we have, what are these challenges? A lot of them are awareness challenges. Trafficking will continue if people are not aware of what trafficking is about. Coastal, habitation and environment will be destroyed if people do not realize actually what is happening out there. So the power of the younger generation actually and think back, I give you some very small examples, say fireworks, how much fireworks used to trouble us, till actually there was a movement saying, look, this is not good for the environment. I could cite to you other examples like this. And a lot of this change is actually coming from younger people. And I think the ability of the younger people to spread the message and influence often people who are much more set in their habits is a very, very strong motivation. So I would absolutely encourage younger generation to take on that, sense of mission. And I think that's very much Prime Minister's expectation also of the younger generation.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Minister has also agreed to have one more round. Let me quickly come to Tripura University, Pondicherry University, and Indore. All three are waiting. I would very much like them to come online and quickly ask very brief questions. Tripura University, can we have Tripura University?
Namaskar, sir. My question is, how G20 can help in the development of a small northern state like our Tripura?
Thank you. Pondicherry University.
Thank you, Pondicherry University.
Can we have Pondicherry University? If not, DAVV Indore.
Namaste, sir. So I would like to know, I would like to understand our role being a country, what role India will be playing during this presidency. Being a researcher, how can we contribute to the presidency period? And how it will be beneficial for India, and especially what sectors of economy will be focusing upon. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, last question from the room. Anyone? My goodness, we would have to really make a choice, sir. I think you would have to spend half a day with them at least. So I can't decide about this. Maybe I think I would go right at the end, in the middle. Yes, there.
Thank you so much. Namaskaram. So, what are the biggest geopolitical hurdles and challenges to India while successfully organizing G20 summit? And what are the solutions to it? Furthermore, is it correct to say that this G20 presidentship will be a catalyst to transform India into a superpower and a developed country much ahead of our own estimated targets?
The first question, if I understood it, was, how would it help a state like Tripura? I think that's a question which all other states can also ask with equal logic. And I'll tell you how it would help. I mean, first of all, to the extent that there is overall national gain out of G20, gain of influence, gain of image, gain of recognition, gain of familiarity with our country, it will apply across the country. So every state of India would gain. But what we are also trying to do is actually see that G20 delegates have an opportunity to visit as many states of India as possible, as many cities of India as possible. So as I said, the Prime Minister day one told us, he said, this is not a Delhi event. Take it across the country, take it out of the capital. So there will be naturally a few events. It is the capital of the country. But beyond that, our intention is to take it across the length and breadth of India. And I would say this, I have myself been attending G20s from 2015 regularly. I missed 1 year, but otherwise the last 8 G20s I've done. What happens in a G20 typically is delegates, for whatever meeting will come, often they are regular delegates, they're domain experts or they're officials. So whatever impressions they gather, they will spread it in their peer group. They will also pass it back into the system. So what would happen, say for Tripura, would be whichever meeting is held in Tripura, there will be a set of people, I assure you, who had no feel for Tripura before, would probably not have been there. But as a consequence of the G20, would have come there, spent time there, maybe eaten local meals there, seen the local culture there, and gone back. And in their minds, definitely Tripura is very, very strongly on the map. So the whole idea in that sense is really to make the world much more appreciative and understanding of the diversity and the richness of India. And that is really something, as I said, we want to make this a people's G20 so that we have, the people who go back must not just have a sense of a state or a city. They must have a sense of a people. And that is very much our expectation. We are very confident that this approach of the Prime Minister would work very, very well. The second question, the researchers, how would the economy benefit? I'll club the two, the economy and the geopolitical hurdles in a way. Look, it's not like G20 I mean, yes, of course, there will be some benefits. A lot of people would come. There'll be a lot of direct activity. After all, MICE itself today is recognized as a substantial economic activity. But the indirect benefits of the world's understanding and appreciation of India will also translate into the world's economic judgments about India. When people come and see our capabilities, some government, some business, some officials, some activists, some organization will say, those are three new things I didn't know the Indians could do or do so well. So we expect, whether it's economic issues or whether it's their political assessment of India, whether, it's a cumulative sense of the country, its history, its heritage, its civilization, that will certainly grow. Now, in terms of the geopolitical hurdles, in a way, I answered that question earlier, that it is a very polarized world. I'm not underestimating it. I know there will be challenges, but we have contributed in our own way in support of the Indonesian presidency. So we have a good sense of what some of these challenges will be. And we do think that India's good standing, the fact that people know we are an independent-minded country, we will do what is right, we will do what is good for the world. I think that will stand us in very good stead, and I'm very confident we will overcome the geopolitical challenges. Now, having said that, I felt really bad how many hands were raised. So, okay, I'll do one more round, but absolutely the last round.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. I think that's great. Okay, please.
That's first mover's advantage.
Please.
A very good afternoon, sir. I am Raghvendra Dadij from MIT University, Haryana. Sir, I would like to ask you that as India is assuming the presidency of G20, and we also took over the chair of SCO in the 16th of September, there is a great opportunity to show the world the capability of India in becoming Vishwaguru. How we are looking forward to take some bold moves in the discussions related to global crisis, keeping our national interest in the forefront, and also put forward our candidature as a permanent member in UNSC. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let me go in that corner. Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for the recognition. A very warm good afternoon. I wanted to ask, as India has already shown its digital prowess through platforms like CoWIN and UPI, right? Is there any other sector that India aims to pioneer, knowing the entrepreneurship and the spirit that the nation has shown? My name is Shivoham, and I am from MIT University.
Thank you. Let me have this girl right here in the middle.
Hello, sir. I'm Tashifa Shakil from Jamia Millia Islamia. This is a sort of a personal question. So in the first session, sir was talking about MUNs and how, like in Model United Nations, we can keep the theme as G20. Coincidentally, we are having an MUN, Jamia MUN in February. And I just wanted to ask you, because we're talking a lot about G20, but there's a lot of confusion about what it is. So can you give us some ideas about what can be the agendas for an event like Model United Nations? Thank you.
Okay. The first question, look, there are many things we have done which would be relevant to the rest of the world. A lot of it is relevant to the developing world, but a lot of it may be relevant to other people as well. The presidencies that we do, these are opportunities. I mean, the biggest, of course, is the G20. I'm impressed that you also picked up on the SCO, and there'll be other occasions like this, because we are today joining many more organizations. Our leaderships of those organizations make a difference. People have expectations of us. So when there is it was not like foreign policy didn't happen earlier. They happened earlier too. It is just that at that time, maybe we were not so strongly in the world's radar. Their expectations of us was not so strong. So with the passage of time, I think more and more countries do have takeaways when they deal with us. There can be technology takeaways, it could be digital, it could be health, it could be climate, because this country is undergoing an extraordinary pace of change right now. So even when I go out, I mean, it's very interesting. I often do my foreign policy conversation, but at least half the conversations I have with other foreign ministers, they actually ask me saying, I read this about India. And a lot of it is, maybe something on a university or school, playing field, a tech company, the innovation. They are very curious. The world is intensely interested in actually this transformation which is taking place. And this offers us an opportunity. Now, I'm very confident with the passage of time, there's a global understanding which will strengthen our case to become a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Because finally, we will need the strongest support from the world for that to happen. You mentioned COVID and UPI and said, okay, what other sectors? Look, the sectors are infinite, because I'll tell you what has changed in this country. I do visit universities from time to time, as frequently as I can. And even when I visit universities, I see a change. It's a change maybe in the last 5 years. And I know I have a UGC chairman and a vice chancellor sitting next to me. 5 years ago, if a minister came to a university, people would say, meet our best students, these are our gold medalists, or these are our students who've done well. Today, any university I go to, especially I've seen it in the technical universities, the business universities, they put up people and say, meet these people. These are the people who've done innovations, they have startups, these people have patents. This is a very different era that we have now moved into. So much of the world is today interested in those capabilities. What is it that India would produce? I'm looking today, often, people ask me about businesses. In the old days, I could have said, okay, I know these businesses. Today, they are multiplying so fast that we can't keep track of it. And that's the energy today, which in a sense has been unleashed. And certainly one which I hope G20 members will come and experience for themselves. Because again, I'll tell you one thing, when you, as I said, I've done 8 G20s before. It's not like you go in, do the meeting and get out. That might happen at the summit meeting. But if you are there as a minister, or you're there as an official, or you're there as an activist or a domain expert, anybody coming to India will also spend a day or two before, a day or two after, maybe go to another place. There will be a much bigger exposure than just the immediate meeting. And I'm sure they'll pick up that sense of change in India. In fact, many of them would probably already know it and want to come and see it for themselves. So finally, the question, what happens in a model UN? I think Chief Mr. Shingla pointed out part of the answer is here. This would give it. But, as people who attend the real UN, I can tell you, the whole idea, the best way of doing it is like to grasp that sense, the nichod of the whole thing, which is really an India which wants the G20 today to look at the core issues of the world, finance, trade, development, equity, sustainable climate. These are really the big issues which confront the world. Internalize it, and I'm sure your model UN will be wonderful.
Honorable External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, now all of you have heard what he had to say. We really hope